I work for Dress for Success San Jose. So we're a nonprofit that helps women re-enter and enter the workforce, and we provide professional clothes and career development programs. So, I've heard about Dress for Success San Jose like a long time ago. When I first started working like 10 years ago, and then I was in retail management, and then I had a child, and so I realized that retail is not the lifestyle for me as a parent, definitely as a new mom. So I wanted to look for something that's like 9 to 5 that still gives back and has like a mission that I really like am passionate about. I love that you like every single day is different, although it's like management, every single day is different. I actually like the turnover in retail because if somebody is like not passionate about it, like either you sink or you float. And so you can kind of like right off the bat kind of figure out who's going to sink and who's going to float. And I loved chasing numbers. Like I loved having goals and like make going above and beyond the goals was like my thing. It really is. I still think it is, but it's a lot more cutthroat now. It gets really personal. So the people that have been, it's very rare for someone who's been in retail for like 30 years now. It's very rare. So I actually grew up in Reno. I moved here like to the Bay Area 10 years ago. I love the lifestyle. I love how, the diversity of it all, the food. And that's why I stayed. So I've been here for about 10 years now. It's slow. It's very slow. It's a very small, like close-knit community. So you knew everybody from like elementary school all the way to high school. I'm Filipino, so the Filipino community is very small but very connected. It was a good and a bad thing. So we worked in the gambling business because that's what it is. However, we're not gamblers. I would say like we were in banking and like nursing, those fields, apart from like working in the casino. I worked for a bank, and it's really sad because, you would get the customers that would come like every paycheck, to gamble, they're gambling. So yeah, I mean, like, as a mom, like when you first find out that you're going to be a mom, you just like jump right in, you have no choice, like you have to jump right in, and it's like your brain just knows like, okay, it's not just you, like you have a responsibility for someone else, and you just like go with it. Like being pregnant and working retail, I knew I had to just keep going, like whatever happens, like just keep going. And you take it day by day, and you learn with your child, which is kind of cool. You learn how to be present in the moment because they're present in the moment, and then you catch yourself and you see your weaknesses in how you parent, which I think is pretty cool. And then you have the opportunity to catch it and then work on it, so that hopefully you don't mess up your child with whatever you're working on. So I would say just being grateful. Like I grew up with a dad that's always like, like, thank you, God, for the food. Thank you, God, for, the house. Thank you, God, for, like, every small thing. We grew up very humble. We grew up in the Philippines. And every single little thing, like, he would always say things verbally, So I heard that growing up. And that's something that's, like, I've definitely, like, instilled in my parenting. Just being grateful, knowing that nothing comes easy. And that whatever you have to be grateful for. So Manila, yeah. So I grew up in the Philippines, and then we moved to Reno when I was 8. My parents, my dad was in the States for 3 years, so it was just my mom raising my brother and I for 3 years. I don't know how she did it, but she did. I'm 31, and she moved to the States when she was 31 by herself with no family around. So I admire that about my mom a lot, just the keep going spirit. How much waste there is, that was the first culture shock that I've ever had. There's so much waste. We don't, growing up, that wasn't something that was allowed. You put on your plate what you could eat, and I remember the first night, it's a big gathering because everybody's coming from the Philippines, and there was so much food that was thrown away, or juice that was thrown away. And to me, I'm why? That was not okay. And then also just how independent people lived in the States. It's a work, it's definitely a hustle to live here. In the Philippines, although it wasn't elaborate, and it wasn't we didn't grow up rich, we were always together. in the States, it was like a culture shock too. Like I was so used to having my mom in the house with my brother, and then we moved here and like I barely saw my parents. So that was a culture shock too.
Because there was just work.
You have to work, yeah, and everybody's working. Like in the Philippines, maybe like one or two adults will be working, then you'd have like the grandparents like at home. But here it's like everybody's working. I think hospitality is just something that's like deep in our culture. Just like I don't know where it started, but just I don't know if it's like all the different cultures just coming and taking over. But you just have to be hospitable. It's almost like a survival skill, I feel. Yeah, and just like being able to not only to take care of yourself but other people too is like a big thing. My daughter's I have a daughter. She's 3. It was really hard. Like COVID pretty much put 5 different roles into one household. That in itself, kind of imploded, as my experience in the summer, showed. It was really hard because you didn't have like a break. I appreciated traffic during COVID because at least, that 1 hour in between like work and like school pickup, I was able to kind of like decompress and like kind of think about other things and just focus on driving and not like 5 different things at all times. It was very difficult to juggle everything, not just like the physical aspects of it, but like the emotional aspects of it. It wasn't just like, oh, let's make sure we're not sick, but like financially, let's make sure we're healthy, let's make sure that we stay afloat. And just make sure that like we're not just like living, that we're also like thriving and, just like doing what we can with what we have. I'm grateful for the house that we did have. There was a backyard that she was able to play in. But unfortunately, that household became toxic and like just unsafe and just became not a house that I would raise her in. So I've learned to tell her I need a break. Like I never imagined myself saying that before, but now like I'm able, and she's 3 years old, so I understand that mentally she's able to like understand that concept. Like mommy needs a break. I need a break. Like we need to pause this. I need space. She is in that stage of life where she's curious about everything and she wants to socialize, and I'm grateful that she's in school where she can be a child, like just be a kid, and I'm grateful that schools have been opened, because it really, like I've heard stories of like children not being able to speak as well as they were before because they weren't able to see people's mouths moving. They weren't able to hear how words are supposed to be, said. And so it's definitely like a learning curve, The funny thing is that she told me she needed a break first, right? And so when I heard that from her, I'm like, okay, I need a break too, like I need a break. So yeah,
let's do this.
So I was, I was really like I was in shock. So I don't know where. I'm sure it's like a school, but she's like, mommy, I need a break. Okay, I need a break too. We can do this. So she understands. But what I'm doing like with the home that we have now is like having our own corners. Like she has her own office, which is like her table with her coloring stuff, then I have my own office like on the other side of the room, so that we can like departmentalize like the house and like where things are supposed to be. So my background, the reason why we became unhoused is because we left a home that we experienced domestic violence in, not so much physical, but more emotional, financial, mental. So the reason why I reached out to HIF is because one of my advocates from another nonprofit is also a nonprofit employee, and she's like, hey, you're in the nonprofit world. This was, this application was brought onto me by my supervisor. I think you should, definitely try it out. And so I read through it, and I forgot there was one piece of it that I didn't have, like one piece of the application that I did not have. And I was like, it took me like a while to actually apply for the HIF. I would say like a week or so. The process was, what I've learned throughout this whole summer and the whole like unhoused situation that we were in is that you have to be very patient. Prior to this journey, this experience, I was not very patient. Even as a mom, I wasn't as patient. And so this summer taught me that patience is key. Working with people is key. and just like advocating for yourself. And so that's what HIF has done for me. They taught me that you don't give up, like you wait, but you don't give up, and even though there's like a pause in things, like you just keep going. This home has given us like an opportunity to just breathe and, plan and dream and be excited about the future. She's able to wake up and she's able to jump around and dance and, sing. And we weren't able to do that in the other house because we had to be quiet throughout the whole day. When I left our past home, I had no other choice. Like I had no other choice but to seek help. And I was in denial, and I was in denial like for a very long time. But then there came a point in time when I'm like, I need help. Like I can't do this anymore. Like I've done what I could. Like it's okay. Like it's okay for people to help me. I wouldn't say it was pride that stopped me from it, but more of inconveniencing other people, thinking that, there are other people that can, needs the help more than I do, right? So it is like a self-realization that we all do need help. That's something I learned this summer also. And then going back to, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yes, they took care of the application process for me. Their application process in itself was super easy. There was just like one piece of information I didn't have, but the whole application itself was actually pretty cool. It was one of the first applications that I filled out, coming out of the home that we were in, and so it gave me time to kind of like look back, reflect, and see like how what is really happening in my life. What they did was again take care of the application process for me for the apartment that we're in now. Talk and be the in between people to approve the application, because it was coming to a point where the amount of time that we were in the shelter was like running out. And so, it like they came in at a perfect time. So HIF is helping in providing like part of the rent. I believe the rent is like $2,100. We're, for Santa Clara County, HIF is able to have the renters pay $1,400 for a 1-bedroom, which is huge. That $700 a month I can like mentally prepare other things for. The gift that they've given me is 4 years, for 12 months. And so right now what I'm doing is preparing, should that gift end in a year, that my daughter and I will not have to like move and find another place. It is very expensive to move in the Bay Area, as everybody knows. And it's not just the deposit, but the actual like moving, of it too. And when you're in a situation that I was in, there's no time to like plan. There's no time to save. Like it was right away. And unfortunately that's just how it is, for other women who are or who were in the situation that I was in. It's like on the go. So there's, you only have so much time to do things, and you have to be really smart with the time that you have. When I found out that we were approved, I cried because there was another unit that I was approved for, but it was, I think like $300 more. So in between that $300, like I could, I was able to like save for emergencies. Like should my daughter need to go to the hospital and I need to make, like the minimum payment, I can do that. It helped me like budget like every single month a lot better. I was able to like breathe a little bit and just know like, okay, this extra like $100 can go here, this extra $100 can go there. It just made me think of the future, and I was really scared to think of the future just because I didn't have a lot of things in control, and I was definitely living in fear. But like having that support from HIF let me have that like power back, that I can make plans for the future and that we can move forward from this. So like to see my daughter grow in a household where she can dance and play. She's already grown a lot throughout the summer, but for her to just know that she's safe and she's loved, and the whole experience has taught me to also teach her that it's okay to ask for help. You don't have to do it all on your own, that there are people that is willing to help you should you need it, but you have to go and you have to ask and you have to want it for yourself. She doesn't really know yet. Like I've asked her that question, but she doesn't really know yet. She just knows her favorite color is yellow. That's where she is. Inez definitely was the advocate that I spoke to at HIF. She let me know that my application is, in process, and I was very like eager to just like get those updates. I've never heard of HIF prior to like applying, so the whole process was like super new to me. But she was very like fluid in like how things were going, and there wasn't, although there was like a pause between like the application and Ness reaching out to me. After she had reached out to me, it was like an ongoing communication. There were times when myself and I believe like the apartment that we were in right now, were talking like 6-7 times, a day for like a good 3 days, and then it was approved and we were able to move in. And then Amanda connected me, for this opportunity for the interview. I would say if I were to meet someone that was in the same position as me, I would tell them to keep going, to not give up. I would tell them that there are resources out there for them, and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to take a step back and know that you're not in control anymore. It's okay to let other people, and it's healthy for other people to show up for you. It's okay to accept that things are not how you planned it to be, but it'll be better, if anything. It can be better and it will be better. And just accept the journey that you're in. It may not be, like I said, like what you've planned, but the journey is not over, and that you keep going, and be grateful and be patient, and know that there are people behind the scenes that are working for you and working, towards your success also, and just to continue believing in that. As a nonprofit employee, what I've come to realize, because I've been a nonprofit employee for 2 years. Prior to that, I was in the corporate, I was in, definitely for-profit. As a nonprofit employee, as a nonprofit employee, I knew that my life would change in a heartbeat, and I would be in the same space, same exact like predicament as my clients would be. And so as a nonprofit employee, you're in this like space where like I'm the one that's helping, right? But there's going to be a time in your life where you're going to need help too. And so for funders of HIF to realize that we are not where we want to be, there are dreams that we want to create, and should we need help, we rely on them to support us in that, it's a circle. Having the home that I'm in right now lets me work better in the community, lets me talk to clients in a more deeper level, because I can understand exactly where they're coming from. I can let them know that, hey, I was in your shoes, but right now I have the help that I can, or I have the help that I have, and I can keep going. So just, it's generosity flows, and that's what I love about working at a nonprofit, is that it doesn't stop like where you give your funds to. All of that like energy, of all that positivity, all that hope, it keeps going. And so that's what I would love funders to understand, is that your money doesn't just stop at that organization that you give your funds to. It keeps going into the community, and it keeps giving hope into people's lives. So that's something you should be proud of if you are a funder of HIF. I'm a makeup artist, but I was in retail management for cosmetics. I worked for Lancome for 5 years. So like all, skincare and makeup is kind of like my jam. So I would say like the sales part of my past job really helped me in this current role, because although it's not like selling products, it's selling programs, and programs that will benefit, the woman directly, but also her children and, her family as a whole. And of course, it's a community as a whole. That really came to play. And just having that like one-on-one conversation, because when you're selling products that are over $50, like you don't just, I never took it for granted. Like that's $50 that's coming from someone's pocket that could go somewhere else, right? And so I understand that. And so when they're buying products for me, I want them to know like what it's going to do for them. That's kind of like how I approach my clients now with the programs that we provide to them, is that it's not like, here it is, but this is also what's going to come with it. It's really cool to work for a nonprofit, because you're giving hope. like, and I will always come back to this, is like, as a nonprofit, that's why there are nonprofit, businesses out there, and that's why we need it in the communities, because it gives hope, and we're working with people, and there's things that we are providing that you can't buy. Hope is expensive, and nonprofit employees provide that. So, and nonprofit organizations provide that. So again, Dress for Success San Jose helps women re-enter the workforce or enter the workforce, for the first time. We provide professional clothes and also programs to help women be ready to, take on that next role and stay employed should they find employment. My favorite story is of a client who is in the same situation that I am in. She was a domestic violence survivor, and she also has a young daughter that she is taking care of. And what I found inspiring about her is that she never gave up. I believe she was from Puerto Rico also, and so that whole like journey from like a different island to like the mainland, it's huge. But she never gave up, and she kept fighting for financial stability for herself and for her daughter, and that's what keeps me going, just because it doesn't end with her. That spirit and that fight and that passion to keep going will like progress with her daughter, and her daughter will see that. Her daughter is really young, so of course verbally she may not be able to say it to her mom, but I know deep inside her daughter would be proud. So yeah, I'm excited for them to continue their work, especially with the nonprofit employees in this huge community of the Bay Area. Because as nonprofit employees, we are almost making like the very bare minimum. And that's what I found out like throughout this whole situation. I'm in the very low income level of the Bay Area, but then you apply for other programs, especially the government programs, and you're making more than what they qualify for. And so it's really hard, and housing is a big part of that. It's just like this small little like room. It's like you're making too much for the government funding, but then you're barely like living, you're barely making rent. And so having HIF be there for us, even that extra $700, makes me like, more excited. I'm excited for them to keep, advocating for this program throughout the nonprofit employees and nonprofit communities, because again, I know there are more people out there that should hear about them and has not had the opportunity to. I'm grateful that, and I'm taking my situation and my journey this summer, to give thanks, because I know I'm not alone, and there are more people that my experience will help. And I'm excited to also like do that for them and, advocate for them because of that. The generosity, again, it's not just going to stop with me. It'll trickle on to my daughter. It's already inspired, basically like my friend was inspired, and so she inspired me to like apply for it. So the movement is happening. It's slow, but it's happening. And I can't wait for it to, continue. Miracle Gamabo, Miracle, and then Gumabo, and my student name is Michelle. I was like, oh, I got this. Like when I was coming here, it's just like a few questions. But then like as I sat here, I'm like, yeah, I'm like going to tell strangers my story. Strangers that are maybe not equipped with knowing like what domestic violence would be. And so I'm careful of like what I say, because you don't want to turn off like funders, because it's a lot. Like as a domestic violence survivor, it's a lot. It's like there's so much aspect that goes into it, and like just having that apartment to just like have the space to like be okay, like we're okay. I would say like a month ago, I'm like, is this happening? Like, is this really like like when it first happened, I'm like, what is this? Like, I feel like I'm floating. Like, is this like a movie? Like, I'm ready for the cameras to come out. Like, is this really happening to me? And then the process of just like finding help and like knowing what help there is. I never thought that I would ever be in a shelter, and I'm grateful for the shelter that we were in. It was safe, but there is only so much time that you have in the shelter, and after that time is gone, like you have to figure it out, you know? And it's one thing to be by myself, right? But then to have a daughter to also look out for also was really hard. And that just adds like the extra pressure. So yeah, it was really hard. I still pinch myself to this day. Like we wake up in the room, we're like, these are our four walls. You know, these are our four walls. We can live in these four walls. When I first got into the apartment that we're in right now, it was such a sense of like relief, you know, like I was able to breathe, just like take a deep exhale. And it took, I would say, a good month to like really think that it's happening. Even with like moving all the things inside the house, it's that feeling of like, you know, coming from like nothing, like no address. As an unhoused person, you have no address, right? I relied on like other people's address to send my mail to, but like having an address to be like, okay, this is where we live, and like telling that first person like, hey, we found an apartment, like this is our new address, is huge, you know? So yeah, absolutely. Like just even having a bed, it's like, really, you know? We were in the shelter for a month. So my daughter and I were in a shelter for a month, and I didn't feel like we needed a bed, you know. I'm like, okay, what an air mattress, like that to us is like luxury. And it's a very humbling experience, because we did come from a home that was, you know, a home, like a traditional home to someone. Then, you know, going straight into a shelter where you had only 2 forks, only 2 spoons, only 2 plates, you know, and you wash it every single time. You know, like going into this apartment and like house shopping was like, why? Like, I don't need all this stuff, you know, like this is enough. It's very humbling, and it's just like it's a beautiful experience. And so although it may not be perfect, and although it may not be an experience I ever thought I would have for myself, it's cool. Like now I have the space to like breathe and think, and it's a cool experience to like share with people, you know. It's unfortunate, but sometimes like the ugliest experiences brings people together. And that's what this experience has done for me. I've met friends who have never, you know, been on the level of friendship that I have with right now. I've met Ines, who I probably would never stumbled upon. You know, an organization like HIF that I never even heard of, you know. So it's so neat to know that there are like organizations out there that are willing to help. So, of course, and like I said to Ines, like any way that I can give back and, you know, support, like let me know. It was intense, you know, definitely. Like I like that it's a conversation, like, because I was like, I'm not gonna write anything down, because I want it to be as fluid and as natural, you know. Although it's like not pretty, like I want to say exactly what I went through, right? But as an interviewer, it's pretty cool, you know. It's intense. It's an intense like session, right? Especially like I said, like I feel like I have to be careful what I say, because I don't know how you're going to take it, or, you know, like how intense it could be for some people. But it was good.